We'll reconvene. So we are back at today's California State Athletic Commission meeting, Tuesday, October 15, 2019. We are on agenda item number 8, which is discussion and possible action regarding the adoption of the revised Unified Rules of Mixed Martial Arts as adopted by the Association of Boxing Commissions at their annual meeting in Scottsdale, Arizona in August of 2019. Mr. Foster, would you please explain?
Mr. Chairman, the ABC made a minor change to the definition of a grounded fighter, and because of that minor change, using Rule 533, the commissioners can adopt it. The minor change is essentially, the language is up there, but essentially you can have one hand down and be considered a down fighter, or another body part, one knee, whatever. But the one hand versus the two hands or 2 points of contact, that's the difference. There was a lot of debate going back and forth over the years over whether two hands or one hand were safer. It's in the realm of
but not fingers.
But not fingers, yeah. Because you don't want to play the game. That happens. That happens. It's a real thing. So if you're going to have it, you got to put your hand on the ground. So this was a rather heated discussion at the ABC this year. Now it was overwhelmingly supported, and essentially what's good about this particular thing with California's adoption of this, essentially the country will be pretty much unified again with the same rule set. Now there's some outliers and some different ones, but I believe California, Nevada, Texas, and New York will all have the same rule set. So Mohegan included, because even though Mohegan maybe not physically a big place, it does a lot of fights.
Can I ask a question? Remember we had the issue about the eye gouging, and there was a issue in the rules, I thought. Was that issue brought up and addressed?
Ma'am, it was discussed briefly, not by the full body, but by the committee. They did look at this issue, and they decided not to make a substantive change at this time.
Was there a reason they couldn't agree, or was unclear? Or
I can get you exactly the rationale, and I can get that for you. I'll get it to you.
Thanks. So basically, that issue that we had before with that fighter, we might have again, because the rules still say what they say.
Yes, ma'am, it could.
So is it just that one rule?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have questions, comments? Anybody? No. Okay, then maybe a motion, then public comment, please. We have a recommendation. We could go with that if you all so choose, or not.
Move approval.
We have a motion to approve the Executive Office recommendation. Do I have a second?
A second.
And we have a second. Members of the public are welcome to step up, introduce themselves, and speak to this matter, if you wish. Seeing no people interested in speaking to this matter, any other comments, commissioners? We call for the vote. Mr. Foster, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Ayala,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Lehman,
Yes.
Commissioner Dr. Williams,
Aye.
Commissioner Senior Quidez,
Yes.
Chairman Carvelli.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0, sir.
Thank you. Agenda item number 9, review and possible action approving proposed changes to Section 299 of Article 6 of Division 2 of Title 4 of the California Code of Regulations, dehydration and rehydration, to set a maximum weight gain from the day of weigh-in to the day. Caesar, was that you?
The big one.
We had a little momentary blackout for those listening, and we're back. Okay, Mr. Foster.
Mr. Chairman, at the last meeting in San Diego, this was discussed. After that meeting, I went to the medical advisory committee, safety standards, and we discussed this this idea. There you go.
Are we okay there, sir? Okay. Well, we're back. We've experienced another little blackout, but we're back. So, Caesar, okay? Okay. Okay, Andy, let's keep moving.
Mr. Chairman, this was discussed. It was talked about. It was talked about at the MAC. Now, I want to give the commissioners full disclosure, especially during the discussion phase. If you can think of something better, I see this is a difficult issue because we don't want to make the matters worse. Okay, and I've been told one of the arguments that I heard, and I really very much paid attention to, is if we cap it at 15%, people might cut twice. That's a concern. Let's put the slides up, Tricia, so you can. So this is the number of bouts between January and October in the state of California, 873 bouts. In 40 of the bouts, one of the fighters was over 15%. So that's essentially, is that 4%? Go to the next slide. Now, you can see from that slide there that mixed martial arts has by far the greatest issue with this. Okay, boxing only had 9 bouts that would have been affected by this out of 561. I'm getting my glasses out. Mixed martial arts had 28 bouts that would have been affected out of 257. Now, what's unfortunate about this is a lot of this is at the higher levels of competition. So we're talking about the UFCs and Bellators. It's the hypothesis that I've provided, and I have data to support it, that people, when they're offered more money and more, they'll cut more weight and that type of thing. So that's part of it. Why boxing doesn't have as big of an issue is debatable. I would say more weight classes is one. I'm not here to debate that particular issue. We've discussed that time and time again. The question, what the commissioners need to realize is, and this won't take effect right away, and we'll have a chance for public comment during the rulemaking file and see if the promoters have anything better than this. But I'm essentially just wanting the promoters and the matchmakers to match their fights closer to where the guys actually weigh. And the only way that I think that we can ever get there is if there's some degree of fear of a cancellation. Now, I've canceled a bout earlier this year because I already have discretionary authority to cancel bouts when stuff like this happens, as long as I consult with medical staff. We had a situation at Pachanga where one fighter had missed weight the day before, and he was 156 and change, I believe was the number. And his opponent weighed in at 155, and the next day his opponent was 168, and he was like 191 or 192, something like that. They visibly looked different from each other. Now, that fighter had already been warned by the commission through letter, the whole thing, about this earlier that year at the forum fights. So we scratched that bout from the card. But it takes a toll on these fighters' body to cut that level of weight through. It has to be dehydration. That's the only thing. And then to put it back on. This is a substantial change to the way that the commission does business. So I don't want the commissioners to go into this blind. I want you to think and talk about it But if there's a better way to go about this,
Okay, so
Yeah.
you made that point, and that's fair enough, and there's a process here. So we're not making any kind of final decisions, that's fine. But can you talk more about, Andy, what we've been trying to focus on? Our mission is health and safety. So you just touched on it. So the only way they're probably doing this is dehydrating. So what have you seen? You've
Correct.
seen fighters passing out. What have you seen?
we're seeing fighters get transported from the weigh-ins. Fighters not make it to the weigh-in because they're in the hospital. We had one of them very recently. We're seeing, we hear these stories of we had a recent one at a Bellator event, and we've been calling around because of the health and safety and weighing these fighters using Skype or FaceTime and this type of thing. And one of the fighters mentioned that CSAC doesn't know what we're doing. We don't know what we're doing. The fighter was like 163 or 160, something like that. It had to be 45 in 10 days or whatever. And we were monitoring his weight down. So yeah, it's all about health and safety. And we have the charts. We know what dehydration looks like, and we know what kind of the levels are. And we're trying to keep people to fight closer to about 10% more or less than where they weigh. And 10% is a big number. That was a number that the MAC went back and forth about, whether it was going to be 8% or 10%. We settled on 10%. But we're seeing fighters coming in over, now not a lot, it was just 4% of the bouts that would, and so that's one fighter in each of the weight classes. But essentially, if you're a middleweight and you weigh in at 185, your bout's going to be canceled if you come in the next day over 212.7. You're not a middleweight anymore, for one thing. Or if you're 45, the bout would be canceled at 166.8. So you've skipped 2 weight classes at that point. Again, there's a process to this, but yes, it's about health and safety. That's all about this is, and my concern is the balance in between the two is if we do nothing, this continues. Because although the 10-point plan has had good success when we move people to new weight classes, that's the only piece that's been successful because you don't cut as much when you're forced to fight in the next weight class up. This is an issue that I struggle with, the staff struggles with. We spend a lot of time in that office in Sacramento weighing fighters because this is an issue. And I think this issue, like I've told you many times before, is related to the other type of issues that we deal with that are a little harder to deal with, the drug testing, the neurological health, these type of issues. I think they're all related with each other.
Good. Okay, commissioners?
So I have a question. Just to be clear, I think what the proposal is to say 15% above the weight class limit, not based on the individual's initial weigh-in. That's what the chart implies. So let's say a fighter for bantamweight weighs in at 132. The fight will be canceled if they're 155.2 versus 15% of their initial weight, which would be less than that if they weighed in for the fight at 132. See what I'm saying? Which I think is a good idea because then it's concrete and it's a for sure number. And you don't have to correlate what their actual initial weigh-in is. Now, I'm not a numbers person. If I was, I'd be a doctor, but. Do you see what I'm saying, Ken?
Yeah, are you proposing then to, rather than base it on a percentage, do a table?
It's 15% of the weight class, in excess of 15%, versus actually what that fighter initially weighed in at. Do you see what I'm saying? So I think that would make the paperwork easier and be more fair. Possibly.
Okay.
Because then it's a for sure number, and fighters don't have to do math
But
to
what
figure out when they're going to be cut
what
off.
if that fighter weighs in way off somehow?
Like super. So that would be like an intense cut. Let's say if they cut
Yeah.
really hard,
Right.
and then they're still kosher as long as they're not like at 155.2.
Yeah, so I think at least the way it was discussed with Mac was a percentage of that fighter's body weight, not 15% above, their maximum weight.
At the medical advisory.
That was the spirit of the discussion that was had. It was that individual's body weight.
And I agree, that's how we've always talked about it.
Mhm.
But looking at this chart, I see when we see that fight counseled column, that's a for sure number, which is 15% of the
So then theoretically, an individual may gain 16 or 17% of their body weight at weigh-in. And I think that the spirit of the discussion with Mac was to set some limit based on percentage of that individual's body weight. From a health standpoint, recognizing that there was also like a fairness standpoint, like they were really in a different weight class at that point. So there was kind of two.
I'm
two
fine with
components.
that, but we need to just make clear because this chart implies that it's a set number.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I was the chart was really like for visual, like just for like ideas. Like, okay, it's an example. Like if you weigh 205, your battery would be canceled at is it 235.6? That's a lot of weight to get in. But that type of
Okay, just so we're clear as to, okay. Because I thought we had.
See,
perhaps
what
changed it.
concerns me about that is it's the individual's body weight is not necessarily a true body weight. It's the body weight that they come in at when they're weighing in, which could be, something they're gaming or something they're, because they could be really dehydrated at that time. So it's not an actual body weight. It's just the body weight they're walking in at, whatever that might be, which already could be kind of dangerous
Right.
anyway. So if you're already talking about a starting weight, which is bad, and then you're adding on 15%, you still may be at a body weight that's not so good. And then, you know what I mean? So the numbers are just skewed. If like in wrestling where you have, and I get it, you can still game this, but, where you have a true walking weight, or at least a a measured walking weight at the beginning of the year or something like that, where you know that this is the person's, what they kind of should be, then maybe if you're talking 15% within or 10% or, some percentage mean weight, then okay. You know what I'm saying?
No, I do, but I think that there's multiple aspects of the rationale for this. Part of it is that we're using the amount that they gain as some surrogate for how much they dehydrated coming into the event. Part of it is that there's some unquantifiable increase in risk with rapid rehydration. And part of it is that there's some reasonable discussion on fairness with respect to individuals who are fighting, so far above the, kind of the official weigh-in weight. Are they really a bantamweight anymore, or lightweight anymore? So I think that there's multiple issues, and we've kind of tried to use this concept of what percentage of their body weight they regain as a way to kind of catch those things and say, how can we reasonably arrive at some fair assessment? So I get it. I think you're absolutely right. It's not a hard and fast equation that we're dealing with.
Are we just compounding the problem, I guess, is what I'm asking. I don't know. And just masking the problem by saying, hey, we're just adding 15% to an already bad issue and pretending like that's a solution when it's not really a solution and they're just walking around still, I don't know.
No.
I'm asking.
Look, your question or what you're asking, I've lost sleep over because I've thought about this. This is not an easy issue to deal with. This is the culture that we've inherited. It's going to take a long time. Here's my thoughts, just dealing with these matchmakers and promoters as much as I do. They're not going to like this, and they're not going to like it, but they don't like risk more than this. Okay? And what I think is,
What do you mean by that?
they don't like the risk of losing bouts. They don't like the risk of potentially losing bouts.
They want a for sure number.
They want it for sure, and they will. I suspect the matchmakers will probably just move the fight up a little bit if they start seeing weights increase, just so that there's no risk to their promotion, which is ideally what we're trying to accomplish from the health and safety standpoint. Because look, we had a bunch of catch weights at Bellator the other day. Nobody didn't watch that because there were some catch weights. Nobody didn't watch that. And my thoughts are that the matchmakers, if they start to see an issue, hey, this person's cutting a ton, let's just move this up 4 pounds or 5 pounds or whatever. Unless it becomes a title situation. In MMA, I just want to throw this out there. Their titles are promotional titles anyway. I don't care if it is UFC and Bellator. They're still promotional titles. This is a fixable issue. And pretending like we're bound to these weight classes that are set in stone and these fighters can't be moved up is frankly, it's not healthy. They're, and the fighters are independent contractors, and they're, the promoter can't really tell this fighter where you're going to fight at, but this athletic commission can. But the athletic commission can also tell the matchmakers and the promoters, you shouldn't be offering contracts to people that can't safely make this weight. I think you have that authority to make that suggestion. Do you think so?
Yes, it falls within the commission's general jurisdiction to promote the health and safety of the public and the fighters.
Comments? Any other comments?
I have a couple questions.
Sir.
So just wondering, based on this discussion, whether or not it would make sense to include as part of this proposed language the actual definition of day of weigh-in, because it seems like obviously the public, if it's already in statute, then I stand corrected. But if it's not in statute, then well, maybe that's the first question. Is it in statute? Is it already defined? If so, then I'll jump on to the next question.
No, I don't think it is.
I don't think it is,
Okay.
Commissioner
I will
Lehman.
look at. I heard me mumbling to myself.
Well, I heard it. I heard it.
Go ahead.
Okay, so that's suggestion number one.
Okay.
Maybe we can look into it a little bit better.
I will.
Because again, even as a commissioner, I'm a little confused, right? And the public, I could imagine, could be even more so. If you're saying, is it, like, again, to Commissioner Lehman's question, theoretically, day of weigh-in should be, let's say we're talking about 205, should be 205, or maybe a pound and a half over, right? But I understand that what we're talking about is the exemption to the rule, where you come in at 10 pounds over, but you're still allowed to fight. So then you take, I don't know, 210, 215, or what have you, and then add the 15% to that. So I think it wouldn't hurt to have some clarity around what you're defining. The second question is around the any athlete gaining more than 10 to 14.9% of their body weight back by official weigh-in move up a weight class. And again, if it's already defined, then I won't ask the question. But does that mean that day, or does it mean the next fight? The next fight. Okay, so there's clarity there. And then on the third, well, the third's pretty clear, 15%. But I think the first question, I think deserves a little clarity, just for purposes of the fighter, preparation, and obviously the public.
Excellent, great.
Are we commenting on this now?
So I want to add something to what Commissioner Martha said. I think that you're right. However, I think it's a good next step on the road to, Martha, to getting where we probably need to be. I mean, and I kind of view this at this point as a no-brainer. I mean, I also think it goes to the credibility of our sport. When people, somebody else may have mentioned that, the public sees, somebody getting down and wait to make their way in, and then they show up and it's a different person. Right? You could go to a weigh-in and see that fighter, and then go to the bout and see yet another that person transformed. I think that goes to credibility. What are you guys doing? This is all, why do you do this? How's that helping? So yeah, I think it's long overdue that we take this next step with all the other comments that the commissioners have made. I think it's a good next step. So
Are we commenting on the language?
yeah, go ahead, please.
In paragraph C, I think I should say contestants may be required to re-weigh in on the day
Okay.
of the competition. It just seemed grammatically a little bit off to me. Then where it says no more than 3 hours before their competition, are we talking about their individual competitions or the actual event?
The event.
Okay. Maybe we should say that, because otherwise it gets kind of convoluted, because somebody could actually drag this. I could see them like sort of dragging it out until their actual match, right? And where you have something like a 20 bout event like we had recently, where you have somebody who's gonna like make you stick to the letter of the law, this could be really difficult.
Yes, we want the flexibility because they arrive in waves, as you know, especially for those 20 bout cards. Big,
Right, but if you make it before their event, then you can make it flexible instead of them making it flexible for you.
Got it.
Right?
So it's that deal.
And then I had that question, the 10% to 14.9%, who makes that determination? Is it the doctor?
Well,
CSAC.
yeah.
Yeah.
Should we specify at the discretion of the commission?
Said maybe. Yeah.
It's usually like I just consult with the doctors following the fights that week, and I'll call them if we've got essentially what happens is the first time this happens, they get a warning letter.
I don't think that's Martha's question. I think she's trying to make it clear where the authority lies. So maybe Ken.
Right. Because I would hate for this to be ambiguous enough that somebody,
Yeah.
makes it so that it's
So you want to say like the commission may require
right.
Rather than using the
Maybe
passive
the
voice,
contestant to move up.
Right.
specify who is
require-
authorized to make the determination. The commission may require.
Right. Right?
Got it.
So the commission. And I found the reg that talks about weigh-in time.
About what?
It's 297. Contestants shall be weighed within 30 hours of the match, and get permission to weigh in not later than 1 hour before the scheduled time.
That's the definition of the official weigh-in.
Weighing time, yeah.
So maybe we should use that terminology as opposed to the official weigh-in. Or maybe we should just define it from the weigh-in as defined in blah, blah, blah.
Ken, are you getting that? helping us to,
Where it says from the official weigh-in,
Just type that.
which one is that?
do you see that?
Oh,
Ken?
on C, C, right?
Yeah, in C, because it says their body weighed back from the official weigh-in, but the official weigh-in is not defined. So instead of saying the official weigh-in, maybe we should refer back to the reg that Mary is referring to.
297. Maybe we should approve this, well, get into the point of approve it in substance, and then we can go into the,
Right.
Oh, we've got
At
plenty of
some
time.
point.
We're
Yeah.
gonna have plenty of
I
time.
have a,
but maybe we're still
Yeah.
doing substantive discussion now.
yeah, well, once we get to that point, I do have a proposed motion that would allow for non-substantive modification.
I have a substantive comment about D, and for the attorneys in the room, I'm worried that D might be too vague, and so not pass legal. Every effort, if you violate a reg, I don't know if that's clear enough to pass legal muster.
First, we should take out that.
Take out every effort, shall ensure. Take out make every effort,
Oh, that's even better.
right?
But reasonably obtain, yeah. I'm just throwing that out there. Ken knows more about how they review these regs, but as you know in our experience, when something is deemed too vague, they can't
I think you're
enact
absolutely
it.
right.
So that's like a red
Well-
flag to me.
I would just make promoters and matchmakers responsible. Reasonably responsible. Reasonably responsible.
But what does that mean? Is
For
that set?
contestants, well, because they're reasonably responsible for their contestants to comply with these provisions.
Well, that's different. Maybe we want to say that. Because
Mhm.
as it is, it implies if they violate this, are they subject to liability if a fighter is injured? Are they subject to getting their promoter's license revoked? Do we want to say they're responsible for ensuring compliance with these provisions?
Right,
Because then maybe that's more specific.
right. See, if you say that they are, because you're really saying that anyway, right? If D, you're really saying that they are being made responsible anyways. And actually, I would say that promoters, matchmakers, and maybe their corners and trainers and managers and chief seconds even.
All licensees.
Well, not all licensed, but you know, promoters, matchmakers,
Managers for sure.
the athletes, managers, trainers, and chief seconds are responsible for the athlete's compliance with.
I don't think chief seconds. I used to just take whoever was in the arena.
Okay, maybe not the chief second. Well, you decide who, but are reasonably responsible for the athlete's compliance with X, Y, and Z provisions.
But
That's more
but
specific.
that's different from. It seems like Andy, the spirit of that section D was placing some responsibility on not even offering these fights to fighters that are unlikely to be able to make that weight without dehydration.
Correct. That was like without severe dehydration.
Yeah, we're worried about that
you know.
being too vague, so that was why making it more specific, but it might hopefully have the same result. If you have to make sure your fighter complies with section C, does that get us the same place? But it's specific what their duty is.
Well, if they're reasonably responsible for their fighters complying with
Section C.
section, what about just 299?
Okay, I'm there. I agree.
You guys tracking this,
So-
gentlemen?
Okay, so it sounds like the modification would read something like this, that promoters, matchmakers, managers, and trainers are responsible for ensuring
But it-
that.
So far, so good?
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Shall be reasonably responsible to ensure that ballots offered.
How about the contracted contestant or the contestant contracted to compete in,
Just that, that's good.
The
Their
contracted
contracted contestant. Comply,
with this section.
yes. Simple.
Okay.
Bring it back in December for approval. After you work
This
out
has,
the
this is
language.
gonna go through the process. so-
Are the managers and trainers involved in this way? So, in other words, do they have the ability to comply with the requirements?
immediately involved, what does that mean?
I don't know, Counselor. I don't know. No.
Not second.
Professional trainers, so that's it. Promoters, managers, professional trainers, and matchmakers.
Do we want to say professional trainers or
Just
licensed
the
trainers?
type is professional trainer.
That's what our licensee says?
Yeah.
Okay. Our license.
Are responsible for ensuring.
The
That's right, you can get rid of shall ensure. The ballots offered to contestants are a weight class that can reasonably obtain.
Their contracted contestant, is that what we said?
just the contracted contestant.
The contracted contestant complies with this section.
Go to offer, where the second line, third word, add contracted contestants, please.
Ballots offered to.
Contracted.
I think ballots offered needs to come. Because if it's offered, it's not a contract yet.
I also suggest ending the sentence after reasonably obtain.
And but it's comply with this section. So after contestants,
Unless
it's
you need the
comply
rest of
with
that.
this section.
This section?
Yes. And everything else goes away.
That's fine. Or the rest goes away? Okay, yeah. Delete the rest, please. So there you go.
Yep.
That's B.
So up here,
Should be C and D.
yeah,
Yeah, C and D.
I'm really just trying to.
Copyright?
Can you copy it from your email?
So for that particular provision, then I think there was a discussion about, first of all, required to weigh in on the day of the competition.
No more than 3 hours before the event.
The event.
The event,
The
Yeah.
event.
then we said,
May be
the
required.
commission may require. So, and delete may, or, no. And
Requires.
put the commission may require
The
to
contestant.
move up, right, the contestant to move up.
Go back to change athlete to contestant to be consistent, please. Do a lot of editing.
You're trying to freeze me out over here,
To
You want
move
to
up
switch
a
with
weight
Louise?
class in a future bout.
Here's our staff guy.
Yeah, I think what I talked about.
Yes.
What is that?
She's freezing. You want to switch seats?
It's nice and cool over here
right?
too.
I have
But
icicles
I can
coming
switch.
out of my ears and my nose. No,
Want to come sit over this other chair over here?
it's okay.
And
Then
do
we'll
we need to
see
add the
the
official
screen.
weigh-in on that second sign? Any athlete gaining 15% more of their body weight, yeah, shall have their bout canceled. Yeah, from the. Does that official weigh-in need to be cited back to 297 in any way?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, so from the official weigh-in, should we say per section 297?
But 297 deals with, is it entitled time of weigh-in?
I don't know. Mary?
What? I'm sorry?
We're citing this back to the weigh-in.
Do we want to put that in? It's 297
Yeah,
I
it's
put
in
it
there
in
now.
here.
from the official weigh-in for section 297.
Does 297 define the time of the weigh-in?
Shall be weighed in within 30 hours of the scheduled match at a time and place designated. A club may obtain advance permission by the commission to allow preliminary boxers to weigh in not more than 1 hour before the scheduled time of the
It's
first
my
match.
face.
Would that make a problem? No, because it essentially 297 gives us an out. It gives us that flexibility. Okay.
So do I need to say it in both areas where we talk about the official weigh-in or just that first area?
It's probably better both.
Okay.
And I think section 297 is, should we say it the more proper legal way? Well, we can have permission to make the technical non-substantive
Right.
changes.
Yeah.
What Chairman Carvelli and I were just mentioning is that how that last sentence now reads and also with subsection D, it now makes it the duty of promoters, managers, and trainers, matchmakers to also counsel the bout.
Mhm.
So I think that sounds good.
I
Because
think
if for
that's
some
great.
reason
They're
we
all
miss it
making money.
or whatever, it's supposed to be counseled, and everybody has that duty to counsel the bout if it's over 15%.
This'll-
They're all
But
So we're on
making-
record as that's our explicit intent.
Okay.
Well, they're making it easier, less work for the commission, and they all make money off of this.
Everybody's on the same page.
Yep.
So are we gone through our substantive changes? Do we have some language that
Let's put it back up there.
can we see this?
Saving is a good idea.
I know, I don't want to, I can wait though.
Say what?
No.
Oh, wait, we done?
Yeah, where's A
Can
and
she
B?
save it? Can she save it?
Sure, save it.
Please
Wait,
save
C and D is.
it. No pressure.
Thank
Don't
you.
get nervous.
A and B, there are no changes, it's on the paperwork.
Okay, all right.
I just wanted to retype that on Word so I can make the changes
Okay.
in front of you.
So then,
Just don't lose it.
Just don't press delete.
Don't press the.
I am going to request a motion to adopt Andy's recommendation with the commission's substantive changes made here today. And what this motion will accomplish here today, folks, is that we are taking a next step in the promulgation process of this proposed regulation. So there'll be other chance for the public and others to comment and make changes, correct?
Yeah, and if I may, I can provide a proposed
Yes, sir, please.
motion. The motion would be to approve the proposed language as amended here today to California Code of Regulations, Title 4, Section 299, relating to dehydration and rehydration, to set maximum weight gain by percentage body weight from the day of weigh-in to the day of competition, and two, to authorize the executive officer to make non-substantive changes to the proposed language as necessary, or to make non-substantial changes as defined by California Code of Regulations, Title 1, Section 40.
Would someone like to make that motion?
So move.
We have a move, which is a second. Martha? Second? Okay, we have a Commissioner Al, Commissioner Shanakidas. Motion and a second. Here's an opportunity for members of the public to comment on this. Please come forward and introduce yourself again, sir.
Roy Engelbrecht, fight promoter. As a club promoter, anytime I see the word bout canceled, it really shocks me, because as the bigger promotions that have 10, 12, 15 fights on a card, if they lose a fight, big deal. Example, if we have a fight and one side, a local kid sells 150 tickets, and the other side comes in 15% over the weigh-in weight, that bout would be canceled. It means the young man that sold 150 tickets doesn't get a payday. The 150 fans are very disappointed, and the promotion has been injured. My feeling would be, if a fighter is 15% overweight, that bout happens, and that fighter is suspended for 6 months. That, to me, saves the bout, saves the integrity of the show, doesn't disappoint fans, and the fighter who did not live up to that section is suspended for 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, that was a legitimate suggestion. Anybody want to take that up?
So if the focus that our executive officer here has and the commission has is the public safety or the safety of the fighters, and if we allow the fight to go on, even if there's a 50%, even if the opponent is 50% over the weight limit or over the weight of that day, doesn't that raise the chances of the fighter making the weight, getting injured? Because isn't that the whole spirit of this, to basically be, obviously we're talking about dehydration, rehydration, but we're also talking about the safety of the fighters. And so if somebody comes in significantly overweight than the opponent, is that something that we should, keep into consideration as well?
I think so, Commissioner Aiello. This is an issue, and what you brought up is what Roy's brought up is what I struggle with, because I initially had come up with, well, they could just be suspended, and that way the fight can go on. I thought to myself, this is a situation where you have a fighter who could potentially, and this is what I thought about, and I went back to the Mago case in New York because I keep thinking about this. This is not something that we don't know about. This is something that we know about. Okay? It's one thing if we let somebody fight with drugs and we don't know about it. We know this fighter's 15% or heavier, and perhaps the opponent's nowhere near that heavy. And if something bad happens in that bout, I think that, I don't know about the law liability-wise and all that. I'm not going there. I just don't think that looks that great. I think we knowingly let something bad happen. And to me, that's a health and safety issue.
I wonder if there's some way that promoters can protect themselves, like through contract, in the sense of You can have a contract that binds the manager, so to speak, that if your fighter comes in overweight and the fight's canceled, you owe me damages of, liquidated damages of, $1,000, $1,500. And for a big fight, you could even require a bond. It's like you put up 10 grand or 20 grand, it's guarantee your fighter comes in weight and the thing won't get canceled. And if it is canceled, those are our liquidated damages and we get those back. I mean, so I guess what I'm saying is a business concern, maybe there's business workarounds that the market can achieve, but I believe that the health and safety, this is what it requires.
Cancel the bout, but suspend him also, because if you cancel the bout, he could fight 2 weeks later.
Yeah, I wasn't.
Another way?
That's it. That
Maybe we should clarify here. So your point, Roy, was the bout is still canceled, right? It never happened.
Right.
But you're putting teeth in the provision to avoid it ever potentially happening.
Sure, because Commissioner Ayala has
So-
a good point, Andy has a
Yeah,
good point,
so
health
it's
and
a little
safety.
different.
But I don't want the kid that screwed my fight
Right.
to fight 2 weeks later down the road.
So you're asking for some more teeth in this regulation.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So currently, if a fighter comes overweight over the allowed, over what you're allowed to exceed, right, which is a pound or pound and a half. Like if you're 155, you can be 156 and a half.
MMA gives a pound allowance, 1 pound.
It's just a pound. Okay, it depends on the contract. So currently, just refresh my memory that there's a 20% you give up on your purse on that particular or on those particular situations.
Yes, sir.
So would it be as easy as just considering now adding to now the situations where you exceed the 15% allowance, and also adding the penalty to that component of it,
That you're fined also.
right? As was suggested here, or
There's some damage. There's some
so
liquid
just some
damage.
kind of damage on the contract, or
Yeah.
in terms of the.
And the fighter should be suspended also because they've damaged the promotion. But and I like all these ideas. What I do think would happen, and just for your own information, and we've got all the data. Roy Engelbrecht's promotion's not had any of these 15%
Thank you,
issues, but it's an interesting issue that we raise here. Is there should be a penalty for the athlete, but I don't know if we'll ever. I mean, and I want to put it in. It's a great idea. I think what will happen is because I allow the promotions to change their contracts up until the weigh-in, and they know what these fighters weigh. I promise you, they know because they know. So if there's an issue with this, I think I know Rich Chow does it from Bellator. He'll adjust contracts left and right to keep kind of this stuff from happening, just to avoid what we're doing now from happening on the back end. So I certainly think that all I'm trying to do for
Did
the
you say
commission.
that they should be suspended as well as the bouts canceled?
That was
Is
Roy's
that-
suggestion.
That was Roy's
Roy's
suggestion?
What is yours?
Who
What is your
suggested that?
Roy, initially.
So also suspension and fine and liquidated damage.
Well, fine may not happen because the bout doesn't happen, so you can't fine
True.
the kid if he's overweight, because
Yeah, you could put a liquidated
Yeah.
damage
he made
clause.
weight at 3 o'clock on Wednesday, but he's 50% over on Thursday before the fight.
But I mean, that's fine if you're talking about someone who's fighting in Bellator. What about like the newbie kid who
Yeah.
like has a $200
I think-
or is fighting for tickets? You know what I mean? And maybe he's not that or she's not really that experienced with weight cutting, and it's like their second fight. I mean, are we suspending that person
Yeah, no,
for
I don't.
6
That
months?
seems
and,
pretty. Yeah, that seems over the
liquidate-
top, right?
Great way to teach them a lesson right away.
Okay.
I think it's a great idea.
Steve, why don't you stand up and introduce yourself and
For 6 months?
Make your comment.
Yeesh.
Chief Awesome IKF. We do it with our boxing. We do it with our MMA. We do it with,
Do
with
what?
kickboxing.
These
Yeah,
We
who's
do
we and
suspension. I'm
what do
sorry.
you do?
We do suspension as well as a fine. Not here in California because we just started implementing the day before weigh-ins. And if you look in a lot of our results, when you see the fighter's line that says like city, state, it'll be record. And then the first thing after that you'll see is the weight that the fighter originally weighed in, like say Friday. Past that is parentheses that says DOF and then another number. That's the weight that the fighter weighed in when we had fighter check in the next day. And some of those you can see, like we were just talking about here, we'll see an easy 20% difference in weight. So we've been telling people the last probably 4 or 5 months, we are going to implement this thing, whether it's 10% or 15%. I think 10% for amateurs is the number that we're going by, because 15% is a lot. I mean, especially for
Yes,
fighters
it
at
is.
105 pounds. Okay, and I just think that's a big number. If you want to go with 15, that's fine. I understand what Roy's saying also, that it hurts the promoter, but at the same time, if it's going to hurt the promoter, if that bout is going to be canceled, then that fighter now that broke that rule needs to be fined, needs to be suspended, okay, and needs to cover whatever Roy's going to lose on ticket sales, okay? And you have the other issue, peer pressure is going to come into this too if you have the thing like you were talking about if the guy's a pound over his limit and they sign off on it and all he does is lose 20% of their purse. Well, the kid who comes in 16% overweight, okay, and the kid who came in on weight, or the man, whatever, okay, there's going to be that peer pressure issue there, okay? Well, I'm still going to take the fight. I'll fight anybody. I mean, especially us guys in this room, we all think we're great and tough, and we'll fight a guy 500 pounds bigger than us just because we think we can.
Can't speak for yourself,
okay?
man.
So, so my point being is, you got to make it to where peer pressure isn't going to be a point, because especially if that fighter is going to be asked in front of everybody,
Well,
hey, are you okay, with this? So when you do decide that thing about the weight gain, and if you're going to sign off on it for a purse issue, I think that's a whole different topic. I think what Andy originally put forward, saying that, if it's going to be 15 pounds, well, that's it. There is no options for them. Is my
So,
point.
but so Andy, this will be a question for you. Anybody wants to comment? But so we're focused on punishing the fighter, the athlete, who oftentimes, as Martha points out, I think she's correct in my humble opinion, is being guided by others and manipulated by others. I mean, that's how I view our responsibility, right? We're not supposed to be really concerned about the health and safety of the promotions, so why are we focused on punitive damages for the fighter? Everyone should suffer that didn't come in on weight.
Yeah,
Go ahead
Yes,
and
Your
comment. I've got to comment to that as
Yeah,
well.
go ahead.
So, back to Roy's point and to your point, Chairman, that I don't know what the language ended up looking like because of the angle here on D, but the spirit of D and the proposed language started with promoters and matchmakers shall make every effort.
Right.
So technically, the accountability can fall back on the promoters and matchmakers. So instead of saying we're punishing both fighters even though only one was at fault, well, the matchmaker and promoter should have taken action early on to ensure this wasn't going to happen. So if that means telling the fighter who's going to be overweight eventually by 15%, you know what? If that happens to you, it's going to be very difficult for you to come back and fight in my promotion or what have you. Then that's what it takes. But it's kind of a checks and balances as opposed to trying to figure this out at the tail end. If you do surpass the 15%, then there should be a penalty because, as was pointed out, technically it's going to be canceled. So, where is the purse or where's the penalty?
So in business, we call this downstreaming the risk
Yeah, there you go.
from us to them. And I'm talking, pointing to Roy. But I love Roy, but I'm trying to make a point. So
How much blowback is there going to be on the athlete too, though? Because let's say I'm a promoter or a manager, and I say to you, okay, you're going to fight, you're MMA, you're going to fight welterweight. But really, I'm like, not really welterweight. I'm maybe walking around, 35, 40 pounds heavier than that. But this is the weight class I'm being directed to, and I kind of maybe can't cut weight the way somebody else might be able to cut weight. So I'm now going to cost you some money, right? And I'm now going to cost me some money. Maybe I'm going to cost you some money. Maybe I'm going to because I mean, let's face it, some people are better at this than others, and maybe I'm just young, and maybe I'm not as okay, fine, so I've just cost you some money. Now, but I'm a talented fighter. And now maybe nobody else is going to pick me up because they think I'm going to be an issue. So now there's going to be blowback on that fighter, and
What Commissioner Senior-Kita just said is what I want the commissioners to hear. What she just said. She said, I might be good at this, talking about the fighter, but another fighter might not be good at this. This commission does not regulate the competition of weight cutting. It's not a weight cutting competition. We have two fights right now that we regulate. We have a scale fight where we lose fighters at the scale. They go to the hospital. And then we have the real fight, the competition. There should only be one. I feel like if you cut more than 15%, I personally feel like you just cheated. Let's call it what it is. I think it's cheating. And it's sanctioned cheating because we went along with it because that's the culture of this thing, but these numbers are getting worse. They're not getting better.
So I think that was succinct to the point and perfectly said. But what do we do? What we're talking about now, what, Martha?
So I agree with you except for one thing. What we're doing, to me, is half the equation. The other half of the equation is I feel like we really need to add those weight classes because it's kind of a trap, you know what I mean? Like, arguably in boxing, maybe there's too many weight classes because we have 17 of them. So they don't have to cut that much weight because you can jump from one weight class to. In MMA, there's how many weight classes, Andy?
There's
7. Something.
9.
And for women, there's how many? Less.
Less.
So, especially in the the higher. I mean, look at this. So, yeah. So.
You're saying that we're not ready yet.
No,
that this
I'm
needs
not,
more work.
No, we do have to do something because it's becoming very dangerous. But you're pigeonholing so when there is blowback, there's blowback, and then you're pigeonholing the athletes into a very small, narrow window. Whereas that's why it doesn't happen in boxing so much because there's a lot more weight classes. So
could we direct? Here's a question for you guys, commissioners. Could we direct, and for Ken, the executive officer, and include in your motion, Ken, to add in recommendations on additional weight classes and liquidated damages for bout cancellations due to 15% increases?
It would be possible to do that, but it may be a better motion since you're adding something onto something that already has been discussed and approved, is to have a separate motion to direct staff to do that.
And the other problem is you need buy-in. You need industry buy-in. And I don't think we have industry buy-in for the weight classes.
Sir, this commission does have those weight classes, those new ones in MMA. We have 65. We
could direct you to go and review those and come up with recommendations at the next meeting for us in a separate motion, including liquidated damages.
Okay.
So we already have one motion to approve this.
Yeah.
Proposed changes on this, right, that Ken, that you, so we have a second in the motion on that. We had public comment. So I think if you guys are okay with it, we'll call for the vote on that. And then I'm going to ask you for a motion on directing Andy to come back to the next meeting with liquidated damage recommendations and weight class recommendations for MMA. Yes?
Do you think that's a good idea for that?
I want to look into it with the data that I have. I have a lot of data at the office where I can look into the financial
So that's what we'll ask you to do, is go back and report to us at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Maybe make some recommendations.
I have thousands of data points.
Commissioners, you okay with that second motion after
Yes.
we vote on this one? Okay, let's call for the vote on this agenda item number 9, I believe. Non-motion that Counsel read out for us.
Commissioner Ayala,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lehman,
Yes.
Commissioner and Dr. Williams,
Aye.
Commissioner Senior Quidez,
Yes.
Chairman Carvelli.
Aye. Okay, I'm going to ask for that motion. Martha, do you want to make it?
What he said.
Well, so, to just send Andy back to come up with ideas about weight class and possible teeth or enforcement provisions.
Including punitive damages.
Uh,
Well, at least to
It's
research,
necessary.
to research it and
Liquidated
come back.
damages?
What?
What did you
Just
say?
something like that. just
Liquidated damages?
Whatever, how
Yeah.
enforcement.
Yeah, liquid damages. To put teeth into this.
And just as an aside, that Andy has discretion for any violation of these regs to sanction people for $2,500. So arguably, that's in there already.
But 2,500
Just
seems
throw that
so.
out there. Yeah, so in the big scheme of things. But I think it's complicated. I think it's proper to send Andy back and come up with ideas that we've talked about.
That's a good
today.
point. You throw one of those out there to a fighter that got screwed over for selling 150 tickets to Rose Point and make the other side pay for it. That would get everyone's attention very quickly, by
Yeah.
Right.
I second the motion.
the way. Okay, so Mary made it, right?
Yes.
And at least you seconded it. Let's vote on that motion.
Commissioner Ayala,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lehman,
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner
Yes.
Senior Quidez, Chairman Carvelli.
Aye. Great. Okay, agenda item. Mike McAtee, do you have a flight to catch somewhere, sir?
He might be spending the night. Are you staying?
Yeah, he's staying.
You're staying?
I'm trying to stay.
Let him answer for himself. Do you need to go? It's okay. You're here. Do you need to go? I can put you next. We can let you go. You can stay.
You should stay, Mike.
We want him to come to the gender equity meeting, which he volunteered for before.
Hold on. Before you give your report, are you staying or not, Sarah?
I have a board meeting tomorrow. Plus, I have some appointments that I've been trying to change, and it would be better for me to leave tonight. But I can give my input in regards to what the stakeholders meeting is, if possible. It would be better for my organization if I caught my 6 o'clock flight.
It's all
Okay.
about us.
So we
Is that
can.
politically correct enough?
So if we get you out of here, it's only 2:25, right?
Fine.
The Uber driver said with traffic, probably I need to be on the road around 4.
Oh, okay. So all right, hang on for a little while longer.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, let's do our agenda item number 10, subcommittee updates. Can you guys slow roll that while? Or just go ahead and do what you want?
Martha, you want to talk about the gender, or the stakeholder, the gender equity subcommittee? And
No.
we'll at least talk about the stakeholder meetings now
We're
at
having
5.
one at 5.
The Athletic Commission is having a stakeholder meeting at 5 p.m. today. And there's this wonderful flyer up there. And we're discussing gender equity in combat sports and discrimination issues as far as pay issues and anything that people want to bring to us. And also, as an aside, which is obviously important as well, the drug testing thresholds and the 15% that we were just talking about today. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, it will be very important for us to talk about anything, including today's discussion topics. I'm sure some of that will come up today. But as a sport in general, especially combative sports, there has been a lot in the news lately about pay equity. So I think a lot of people will want to talk about it. And also exposure, television exposure and broadcast exposure. So I think a lot of the stakeholders will be present, so it'll be important.
This great program and information that you've put together, are those going to be available at the stakeholder meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
We have
so this is some great work and also a great memo and research put together by Commissioner Shenyakitas is going to be part of that, and some great photos of some badass female fighters. Get your copy.
Is it here? It's here.
Yes, ma'am.
That's here in that box. And it'll be in this room.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so, and then we'll move on to the pension subcommittee. And I would like to give props to our staff, which is doing a fantastic job of getting the information out and dealing with calls about people asking if they have a pension. And I was just told some stories that people call and says, well, do I have a pension? And based on the information they tell us, it doesn't seem like they do, but our staff is wonderful, and they dig in and they go to their own stats, and they really bend over backwards to try to assess whether people have a pension and give them the right answer. And so props to that. And I encourage you, if you have any questions about whether you're going to qualify or not, please call our wonderful staff. And as you can see by the graph that's in our papers, we are like scores above where we've been the last couple years, only being through October in the disbursements that we're giving out. And this is also, you have to realize, this is against the field of people that have already vested. So the group that we're dealing with is getting smaller and smaller, but we're still getting a larger percentage of those monthly. So thank you also for the WBC, which I guess is continuing to get the word out. And every time, people are, in front of the press, and I see everybody's emails, have the pension plan things. So wonderful job all around everybody. As perhaps you recall, that we did move to change the lapse in time for qualifying for our pension. And our staff has been working on the language for that. And according to Beth Harrington, there were maybe 4 or 5 different sections of the pension plan that needed to be revised to effectuate that change. And so that is still being worked out. Obviously, the detailed work in making sure the language is all correct. We want to make sure that is. And I guess there's an issue about whether people will be grandfathered in for the lapse of service. And so publicly I encourage people, even if they think they have a lapse in service or will do, when this new reg comes in, that they should still contact us because maybe they will qualify. Okay, that's my report. Andy, add something?
Well, I just wanted to inform you and the commissioners that we've also started the work that we've been directed on about the potential, just for the commissioners' benefit, knowledge of the expansion of what this would look like if the legislature set up a mixed martial arts version of this thing. So we've been discussing that, and we're in the process of getting that done, a contract. So we should have a report for you in December, not just as the subcommittee had discussed.
And would that be the first MMA pension plan in the United States as well?
It would be. It would take an act of the legislature, but before, because the subcommittee was interested in that topic, what would it look like? What would it entail? How this would work? I think these are questions that are at least worth finding the answers to. And as you saw, the break-in service, if you take away that provision, as we've talked about, it makes it a lot simpler, makes it a lot easier. If you fight 75 rounds in California, you're entitled to part of the program. It's easier to vest that way. And so, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that about grandfathering it in, because that's important.
Yes, and also as a public statement, I think you're entitled to it at 55. 50, but also we have discretion as the commission to disperse it at a lower age if people have medical problems or they need it for other reasons. So, again, call our wonderful office staff. People are standing by. Thank you.
You done with that?
Yeah.
Okay, agenda item number 11. Executive Officer's Report. Andy, you can mix and match it any way you want to do it.
Okay.
Just tell us.
Yeah, Commissioner, I just want to start by saying that the budget report, I've got the revenue numbers, fiscal system still, but I won't go, not trying to criticize people, but it still haven't got expenditure reports. But we've got the budget, the deposit certainly higher than when this was sent out. I believe right now we're at about 830,000 with over 100,000 still to be deposited for this coming week. So we're close to $1 million in deposits so far this year. So that's what I know about the budget report. I wish I had more to share with you.
Before you get off budget, Andy, Raymond James, excuse me. Does everyone see our summary page behind tab 11? So it looks like year to date we're doing very well.
That's correct.
Yeah,
I was surprised.
yeah, that's good.
Have we discussed, sorry, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Have we discussed any ideas how to spend any part of the neurological fund like we did with the C3 Logics?
Not to my knowledge.
Can we? At some point? I mean, not today necessarily.
Sure.
You want to go on the next agenda?
Yeah.
Okay, can we please add that to the next agenda?
Can we do that? Dr. Williams and I have a great idea. Actually, mostly he has a great idea.
So the market's up another 238 points today. It's over 27. Good return for the commission. All right, and the pensioners.
We need to buy this thing quickly.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we can't discuss that now.
Yeah, we can. We've actually talked about it before.
Discussion, we can't vote on
Brain
it.
scan.
Brain scope.
The brain scope, because I believe that more and more, with the advent of more fights and the more interest in fights, and Andy and I've discussed this as well. We have more fighters. And it seems like each generation, everybody does things faster and harder, and they call it things on crack. It's like everything, not like when we were younger, and we used to be able to keep an eye on sparring. We would send our referees out. They would train. They would get in the ring. They would get in the cage to practice. We don't do that anymore because I don't know why, but. And we've had some deaths, unfortunately. We've had some serious injuries. We have, people going to a coma. And I do believe that in at least some of these instances, the fighters come into the fights with slow brain bleeds. Sometimes it's maybe because of hard spars. Sometimes maybe it's because they fall down the stairs, they don't want to tell you, or they get into a car accident, they don't want to tell you, or they have some sort of incidences, and then sometimes afterwards, there may be incidences, there's some sort of trauma afterwards that we don't know about, and then they fall into and there's a way to detect it now.
Yeah.
Right?
So what was being referred to is there's additional technologies, emerging technologies in the head injury space. One of which is something called brain scope, which is a device that's been approved for a couple of reasons. One is it can identify brain bleeds. So we had previously acquired the infrascanner, which was one technology used to evaluate athletes for brain bleeds. It's been used obviously in other scenarios, emergency departments, military, what have you. Brain scope is an electrical test, EEG test, using disposable electrodes that can be placed on the scalp, and then you can run about a 5-minute EEG, and it is more sensitive to bleeds than infrascanner. In other words, infrascanner, the bleed needs to be on the surface of the brain. It has to be a certain volume. With brain scope, you can identify bleeds that are surface or deep and with much, much smaller volumes. So again, it's another objective assessment, objective test that can identify, as was mentioned, whether an individual may come in to a fight with something undetected or we didn't know about, but also individuals who've had a hard bout or who a ringside physician is concerned with can have on site this 10-minute EEG performed that's very sensitive to whether or not an individual is likely to have had a brain bleed or not. The other thing that BrainScope has been working on for the last few years is something called a brain health index that can give you more information about that individual's neurological function over and above just whether or not they have a bleed. And so it can augment some of the information that we're getting with C3 Logics with another piece of data looking at how an individual is performing neurologically, i.e. whether or not they've likely have been concussed or what their overall brain health score or brain health index is over time. And so, again, as we've talked before about ways that we can study and add to the fund of knowledge with respect to a number of things, brain health after a fight, brain health before a fight, neurologic health over time. What is the potential effect of dehydration? So ideally, you could say these individuals who've had between 10 and 15% change in their body weight as compared to 15% or more, are there significant objective changes that we see with respect to neurologic health in those groups? So there's a lot of things that can be done. And so this is an example of another way we can use emerging technologies to improve our mission, which is health and safety.
So do we want to put something on next agenda to?
Yeah.
So Andy, are you clear that we can add this matter to the next agenda? We can take possible action?
Sure.
Excellent. Thank you both. Okay, Andy.
Sir, we've got the examination of boxer applicants. And if you'll read that there, it looks very similar to what I had in my last report. And
My understanding is it's still with the Deputy Director of Legal Affairs. There has been a change in circumstances since the last report in that now we have a regulations unit within the Legal Affairs Division, which is staffed by specialists in regulations. And so I think, at least with respect to future regulation packages like what we discussed earlier today, it should be a smoother process. At the Sacramento meeting, I'll introduce you to your assigned regulations counsel, who is Clay Jackson. We're very pleased to be working with. But with respect to this regulation, it is currently with the Deputy Director of Legal Affairs, I believe, and may be referred to the lead in the new regulations unit for review and recommendation. But that is the status at this point.
Is there something about this regulation that somebody doesn't like?
No, I think
I'm asking sincerely because
I
we've
think
been
it's
hearing the same spiel for years, it seems.
well. I don't
It's
think
a fair
this
question.
particular. It's a tough but fair question, and I don't think it relates to this specific regulation. I think it has to do.
Would you tell me if it did?
I certainly would.
Just ask.
But there is, generally speaking, there has been concerns about backlogs and processing regulations, and that is why the regulations unit was formed.
I know, but you said that 5 meetings ago. and we're still here because there was a time when the TUE and transgender hit the same wall, and then we figured out what the issue was, and then once we figured out what the issue was, it moved very quickly. So if there is an issue, I'd like to know what the issue is, and then we can maybe work through the issue rather than like sort of stabbing in the dark. So if there is an issue,
Commissioner Senior Quitez, this is this new regulations unit. To my understanding, I don't follow the DCA budget process like I do the commissions, but it's my understanding this was part of the budget change proposal that the Department of Consumer Affairs put forward. It was granted. I have a lot of confidence in the Director of Legal Affairs, Ryan Marcroft. I think this was very much needed because internally in the department, regulations used to go to a different place. Now that they're coming straight to legal, it's my hope, and we're going to be the test subject with this new regulation and perhaps with this one, this should increase the speed of these things.
I should have recorded this conversation like 3 meetings ago, because we had the same conversation like 3 meetings ago.
But it's up now.
Right, and at this point, the regulations unit is in place, fully staffed, and
Okay,
prepared to go forward. So
Okay.
that is
I
the,
believe you.
All right,
Okay,
asked and answered, there we go.
okay.
Okay, Andy, where are you?
Okay, we're on the report on legislation affecting the commission. It's Assembly Bill 1523. That's the commission's sunset bill. It was signed into law by the governor. There's a typo. It extends the commission until January 1st of 2024. In the bill, the commission gained 2 positions by statute. Those are 2 civil service positions by statute. The chief athletic inspector and the assistant chief athletic inspector. Last Friday, Ken, and this goes along with my staffing update, but it's right there together. Ken and I met with Cal HR. We met DCA first, and then they sent us to Cal HR. We met with management at Cal HR about essentially posting these 2 positions. You know, because we did the fix on the other one last year. The chairman helped us out very, very closely. Got that done. So we've now been sent to deal with the State Personnel Board. So we're going to go talk to the executive officer sooner rather than later.
our plan
Sent
is,
hacking or sent with assistance from Cal
Well-
HR?
They were very helpful.
Okay,
Yeah.
so at this point, I believe the issue rests with the State Personnel Board, so we're planning to schedule a meeting with the executive director of the board to find out exactly why the matter hasn't been put forward to the board itself, and to determine what steps we could take to get the board to take it up now that it has been established by statute.
when will you meet with personnel? Pardon
Well,
me.
we're planning to schedule as soon as possible. We do not have a meeting yet scheduled, but we're anticipating within the next week if she's available.
Okay. If it helps, you can let them know, as I mentioned to you with your HR meeting, that we're not going to let this go. So that you should come away from that meeting with some direction. This, by the way, and sometimes you can be a little more animated if you wish. This sunset process, this approval, these things that we've been given in statute are a big deal for us. And I think it's kind of a validation, if you will, of the goodwill and the good work that people are noticing that's come out of this commission. Don't you guys agree? Then you should say so. It's okay to brag a little bit. You know, it was a good, very good process, and great result, and well done.
Thank you, sir. The bill, interestingly enough, I know it's a sunset bill, but I'm just pleased to report that it had bipartisan support. To my knowledge, it didn't have anybody in either house and any committee ever vote against it.
It's good, very good, good result. Tell them that we're not going to let this go. We want those positions.
Sir, then, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna just finish my report and then let the delegates come up.
Yeah, let's do it.
The C3 Logics, I'm pleased to report, I know Dr. Williams knows this is a big number. We're at 1,513, and that was 2 weeks ago of tests that we've conducted. That's significant. We brought some of the follow-ups to the MAC at the last time. That program is working. We're doing it, and the numbers are continuing to go up. And I would say that there's not another athletic commission in the country that's got these numbers, but I can say that for sure because I don't think anybody else is doing this. But I think these are good numbers.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And just really quickly, we did discuss some of these items at the MAC meeting. And interestingly, Andy was able to provide some information on some athletes who were tested more than once and where we saw some significant kind of red flags that need to be followed up on. Individuals who had significant changes in some of the different modalities on the tests between their initial assessment and then a follow-up assessment. Sometimes there was a couple of years in between, but significant changes, things that you wouldn't expect to see. Now, whether that was related to dehydration or some other issue at the time of the second test is unknown, but the plan was to follow up on those individuals, reassess them, and perhaps require some other evaluations of them.
For the worse?
Yes, for the worse. For the worse, yeah. So people who, for instance, an example would be one of the things that's done is something called a BEST test, which looks at an individual's balance with their eyes closed in 3 different positions. And normally people, even individuals who are not elite athletes, can maintain station without falling over or what have you with their eyes closed in these different positions. And so one of our elite athletes had 32 errors on this BEST test in different positions on their second test. First test, they didn't have anywhere near that. So some of those things were interesting red flags, things that we're picking up and things that I think we want to follow up on with additional testing. And then as we've talked about in the MAC meeting, developing some more formal protocols for research around this stuff, and perhaps incorporating some of the other things that we've talked about as well. But the testing is going extremely well. I think we've got tons of data to mine. And one of the other things that has at least been discussed was, how efficiently we can mine that in traditional ways, meaning kind of developing these hypotheses and developing a protocol to test that hypotheses and go through that test, what have you, versus some of the more, state-of-the-art ways of looking at data, using computer, big data and what have you, and then modeling things and being able to generate tons of information much more efficiently, more quickly, more cheaply, that kind of thing. But we need funding to do some of that.
I was going to talk about that. I was going to ask about that. I found this foundation that gives grants, mathematical grants. It's very odd, but and part of it is part of the grants are related to statistical data stuff. And I didn't know if CSAC was able to receive grants to do mining of data.
I do not know the answer to that question. I can conduct some research to determine whether you would be able to accept a grant for a specific purpose like that.
If not, maybe the foundation can do it and then get the data from, like a foundation can get a grant from a foundation and then get the data from CSAC and then do it for CSAC, kind of like with the MMA Severity Index, and then give it to CSAC.
Yeah, I think that's a possible workaround. But
Yeah.
let me look into the primary question because I do not know the answer to that.
Because we have so much data that we need to, right?
Absolutely.
I'd like to just say that what an impressive the medical advisory committee that we have, and I know for many years it was, not meeting very, and we didn't have good members. So I'm just very impressed of what everybody's doing and the people that are on it, and I really enjoyed reading the minutes, in here, and I've got all kinds of notes and questions, and I would like to suggest that we include the MAC minutes in our agenda materials, because this is, it's directly related to our work, and we'll be able to understand more what our good Commissioner Dr. Williams says, because we'll have some of the background. And it helps us appreciate all the good work they do.
And I think the chairman a few years ago set up kind of the process of the way the MAC would operate with, and he appointed Dr. Williams as the liaison, and that's been incredibly successful because it's very good to have a commissioner there, because I'm not always articulate in responding back, but I mean, he knows exactly what's going on. I can tell you, but it's not, he understands exactly what's happening, and you know, I'm more of like essentially a minute taker at the MAC meetings and not as much a participant, whereas here I'm a participant. But it's good, and in December you'll have the new slate, either reappoint or whatever. That'll be on the agenda for December. But I agree that the MAC has been meeting regularly, and we're going to be having another training, physicians training down south. But it's hopefully before the end of the year.
Can we have where Andy just said stricken from the record? Because he knows exactly what's going on. He's got his finger on the pulse of those meetings. Don't let him fool you.
Strike that.
Right.
I have one more
Yeah,
question.
Well, before you ask your question, thank you for making a point to thank Dr. Williams for all of his time and how well that MAC is functioning.
And
That's
to
a
be
great-
clear,
great
can
point.
we put the minutes in our materials
Yes,
after they
ma'am.
meet so that we can stay abreast of the good work that they're doing?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead, sorry.
Have we gotten to where we can figure out somebody's return to play after a concussion from the baseline? Or is that, are we still too far off?
No, but I think we've collected enough data that we can start looking at that.
Do we still need somebody to like
we
go
still-
mine that
Yeah, exactly.
information? Okay. Okay.
Okay, you're going to bring up your, want to start with Mike, maybe?
Yeah. Mike McAtee from USA Boxing.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot there, sir, but I guess I did, so, oh well. Thank you for coming as usual and traveling here. We do appreciate that. And obviously, you're wanted. So,
That sounded really weird.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners, and we're glad to be here. I know that coming to these meetings, I do get a unique opportunity to observe, learn, especially when it comes to professional boxing, and ultimately our elite boxers are 1% of our 32,000 boxers will eventually go into the professional ranks. I think besides a lot of people having Olympic dreams, we probably have more that would aspire to be a professional world champion, which this gives me an opportunity when I go back and I meet with our elite boxers, and when I mean not elite age, but our high performance boxers, I am able to communicate what you all are thinking, because eventually most of them will end up in the state of California to participate. So this is great for USA Boxing. It's a two-way street for sure.
great, thank you. It's good to know. Appreciate
A couple of things I'd like to talk about. We just finished our Women's World Championships in Russia. We had 1 gold medalist, 2 bronze medalists, which put us in 4th place worldwide, which was one of our better showings, especially for our female boxers. During the 3rd quarter, we also had several competitions involving California athletes. Richard Torres, Heaven Garcia, both were bronze medalists at the Pan Am Games in Lima, Peru. Then we also had Richard Torres that competed in the Men's World Championships. Heaven Garcia participated in the Women's World Championships. And then we had 2 junior boxer and a youth. And a junior boxer for us is a 15, 16-year-old Priscilla Medina. She won a gold medal. And then also at the youth women's championships are 17 to 8-year-olds. Ivana, and I'm going to spell her name for the record because she's a gold medalist. It's B-E-R-D as in David, U-Z-C-O. She did win a gold medal also.
Verduzco?
But
Liana Verduzco, gold medalist.
So we're very proud of our, as I'm sure you all, about your California boxers. Part of it is we just finished our Eastern Qualifier in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio. I flew directly from there to here. We had great participation. I can tell you that we had over 1,000 boxers register, about 850 participated, and in the next report I will have more details when it comes to California boxers, but I can tell you 6% of the boxers that participated in that were male boxers and 7% were female. So our numbers were pretty consistent with what last year numbers are.
So Mike, which will roll nicely into our next sessions this afternoon. You're obviously giving us some good information about seems to be the rise and success of female boxers, right?
Yes, and we're excited about that. That's one of the pillars of our strategic plan, is not only the rise of female boxers, but we're also coaches and officials. Because obviously our coach, Billy Walsh, says, you teach one boxer, you teach one boxer. You teach one coach, you teach 100 boxers. And so we are actively recruiting when it comes to our older female boxers that, hey, maybe you ought to get involved in coaching. And then officials, one of the things we're most proud of, our international federation, which has its issues, which has been suspended, but half of our approved international officials are women. It's 50%.
That's great. So if you don't mind, and put you on the spot because you're not going to be here later. We have this. I don't know if you read through some of the materials for our stakeholder meeting.
Yes.
Later. So we're talking about the 2 versus 3 minute round for women. Do you have an opinion on that? Would you like to share?
I can tell you that our female boxers and amateur Olympic style boxing box 3 minute rounds, just like the men. And we're very proud of that. And to roll into that also, and I want to stay in my lane because amateur Olympic style boxing is different than professional boxing. We all know that. But when it comes to pay equity, we pay our females the exact same as we pay our males. I know that's a little bit different in professional boxing because of the draw, but since 2016, we have paid them the same.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
With that being said, I'm going to roll into what's happening here in California, and this is an official invitation. We're having our last chance qualifier for the Olympic trials, which will be in Oxnard in November. It'll be down at the Police Athletic League. We're going to start boxing.
You know the date?
Pardon me?
You know the date?
Yes, I do. In my notes here, we will be in Oxnard starting I should know this. We'll start boxing on November 3rd, and that will be elite age boxers, which I believe is a Sunday. That'll be one session. We'll run 2 sessions a day all the way till November 9th, and that will be our finals. The 8 men's weight classes will produce 2 participants that will qualify for the Olympic trials. And at the international level, they have 8 men's weight classes and 5 women's weight classes, which are up 2 from Rio in 2016. We have been in contact with the IOC, and their goal for by 2024 is to have gender equity in all sports. So we anticipate that we are hoping that we can get 8 men and 8 women's weight classes for the 2024 games.
Are you having a 125 weight class for the women's?
Pardon me?
Is there a 125-pound weight class for the women's or no?
Yes.
There is.
So we have 10 female weight classes, and actually we're going to go down to 9 male weight classes just to be more in line with our the Olympic weights. In non-Olympic years will be 10 and 10.
Excellent, thank you.
A couple of things that have come about, and I know you all granted us the permission to provide quarterly reports on the quarter. One of the things, unintended consequences that we've discovered is by your rules and our rules, we require the financial statements to be produced within 14 days. So you'll see in our report there some are pending reports. Those are two that occurred 2 weeks prior to the end of the quarter. And then the other situation or opportunity that we've run into, because we are a volunteer organization, we've had some sanction holders that are get their paperwork in quickly. Some of them have been confused that haven't. What we're working on right now, because I will be here for multiple days in November, that I'm reaching out to all our LBC leaders so we can have a meeting and a course so we can tighten up those procedures, and so we're all reporting the same way. I think will be helpful in clearing up some of the confusion, which then also let you all know in the end of this year we will be, each LBC will be voting new leadership positions they'll be starting in January 1, 2020, and we'll go till December 31st of 2024. One of the things that we're also going to use as a model when it comes to reporting, we're going to be providing training in March of 2020 to all LBCs. We're inviting them to Reno. It'll be a cost share program where USA Boxing will cover their housing and food for 3 days worth of training. The LBC's leaders will just have to pay their way to get there. And again, I think that helps with reporting across the country. And then it just does give consistency with leadership as we move forward.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
So I'm looking at your sanction list, Southern California, LBC. You had 4 injuries, all injuries listed under the Riverside County Boxing Club. What's going on out in Riverside?
I think part of it is more opportunity for injuries. Southern California LBC is the busiest LBC that we have in the country. And so if you look at the sheer numbers of bouts, I can't tell you that if you look at number of rounds, there's a typo in there. It should be 3,105 instead of 3,105, and I apologize for that. But what I can tell you, our injury rate per round is 0.0013 per round, or that's 0.13% per round. To be consistent with how we report internationally, we will probably, and I will note this at the beginning of the year for you all, we'll be reporting by bout as opposed by round, because it'll be more accurate. We cannot, if a bout is getting stopped in the first round or a bout's getting stopped in the third round, that number we don't track. So we will start reporting by bouts. And again, that number is conservative because it's 1,035, which becomes an injury rate of 0.38% per for the bouts. But technically, it would be half that because we have 2 boxers in each bout that both have potential to be injured. But we're only going to count the bout. So I think we're very excited about that. I'm also interested to learn more about what Dr. Williams has said about this, the brain scan technology, which we'll be reporting to SportsMed at the USOC level. USOPC level. So again, it's another one of the opportunities for us to learn from you all also. Any other questions? Yes.
The border LBC, do you know any reason why they're just not having so many events? Are they doing more smokers? Are they going down to Mexico? Do you have any idea what's going on down there?
I actually have a call in to them and their president. Part of it is some of their boxers do go across and compete in Mexico. We do require them to, so their insurance will carry over. We have foreign exchange bouts, and that they do report it so we can keep track of those, and it also the insurance will follow them there. So we are working with them, and we've also been working more with the Mexican Boxing Federation. Not only does it affect you all here in California, we have a lot of crossover bouts in Texas. So they are, we're working with them so we can have more accountability for our boxers and for the safety, because if we have a boxer that goes over to Mexico and they get stopped, we need to have the medical to be able to track it so we can issue a medical suspension. So it is on our radar, and that is something we're working on.
Thanks, Mike. Anybody? Andy?
I have a question. When I was reviewing these documents, I had a question that just popped up, so I held it till we're in a quorum. I've got no issues with losing money for a nonprofit organization, but my question is, why in the world is USA Boxing losing money like it is in the southern LBC region? I mean, you know, specifically with the Chino Boxing Club, there was zero revenue. I mean, if these are charities, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, I don't know if it's so much the commission's business to be asking these kind of questions, but like, you know, you're the executive director. I look at these kind of things in my office.
Yes. That's a great question, and I think it's been brought up before. The mindset of the Southern Cal LBC leaders is that they want to spend membership dollars on members, so they keep their fees low. And it will be at the end of my report, and this is one of the biggest things I've asked them when it comes to how they are accounting for revenue. We did find that when they get VIK, they don't count that as revenue, so that there was a Green Belt Challenge that was there that they received quite a bit of VIK that would have been, or value in kind.
VIK?
Value in kind, I'm sorry, donations. So that's one of the big things that I agree with you that it came across is, are they accounting for dollars that come in? And this shows my ignorance with, and I apologize, California, I don't believe you all charge a tax, a gate tax on amateur boxing like you do in professional, correct?
I mean, if we regulate it, we do.
Right.
Okay, but we don't. You do it.
Okay, but we don't regulate gate tax, so I think it may be more of an educational accounting process. Every one of these shows are run by nonprofit gyms. Most of them, like I attended when I was out here doing a site visit, they don't charge regularly what a door fee or an entrance fee. They do charge for concessions. So a lot of them are not charging an admission fee for people to come in.
Because let me tell you the concern. Because the concern last time was, okay, well, the pro-ams are, you know, and that was the one accounting area. Not a big deal. But now these are amateur events. And
yes.
So, I mean, I wouldn't call it hemorrhaging, because when you add these next 4 events to it, you're probably going to break even, or you're going to come close. Okay,
yes.
Unless your expenses exceed your revenues on those. Here's the thing. I've got promoters that want to do business with USA Boxing. they want to come and they want to do business with USA Boxing. So let's you and I get together like I got together with Camo 7 years ago, and let's figure this out. Because I feel like with the pro shows that want to do business with USA Boxing, you know, your revenue can increase because you can charge. They get the benefit. Everybody wins. And I know we just did the one at Chumash together. I know we just did that one. But that's the first one we've done in a while.
And that's a great point, and I did bring it up after our last meeting, and I'll be meeting with the LBC leaders, Joe Zanders, when I'm back out here. But what I can tell you is they select or issue their sanctions for all of next year in November, and they have they every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and so I don't think I think we can work with how they can maximize it to be able to make some money, but I do know that they also have so many sanctions that that's what they have decided to do.
Wait,
What you're saying is the accounting. The books have to show it's profitable in order for pro to be interested in combining with amateurs. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, I'm just saying that their numbers are showing they're losing money, and I have promoters that want to work with them, but they have this rule that you can only have one sanction per day or something like that, and it's some kind of rule. You've got to get it so far out in advance, and then when they go to them, they say, no, we can't do it that day because we already are doing something, or you didn't come in time. Is that essentially correct?
Kind of. What it means is in a lot of LBC, especially like SoCal, we have them in Texas too, that they have because there's a finite number of officials to work it, that they will only issue one sanction per day, or if it has to be over 100 miles apart to be able to have enough boxers to participate. So part of it is having enough officials to go work one event and then turn around and work another. But it's something I think we can all work on.
Can I step in here for, okay. So you provided me with financials. I kind of started working through them. And I just wanted to say, I can't account for them. I cannot square them with what I have and with what I see and with what you provided. So I would like to see if I can work with Andy and with your office. I don't know if anybody else wants to work with us because they don't make any sense. And it needs to make sense. From the day that we started until today, which has been 6 years, I have not been able, and I understand finance, and I understand numbers, I have not been able to figure out USA Boxing's accounting. And I have gotten the accounting from the LBCs, and I've gotten the accounting from USA Boxing, and they don't jive. So they need to jive. So let's start from there, okay?
Excellent.
In terms of your website, WebPoint, I used to be able to get on, I can no longer get on. So somebody needs to give me back access. So whether it's Shirley or you or whoever it is, I would like to have access to an administrative access to your database again, so that I can see where the events are, and I would like to be able to see the reporting for on the administrative side, because we need to be able to see the suspensions, we need to be able to see all the administrative things. I really need to be able to see the financials in a way that makes sense, and forget, for now, who wants to do promotions with you as a clean slate. We need to be able to make sense out of the financials. It can't be that there's pending stuff or what. Even if we can just clean up from like,
So-
the beginning of the year till now.
Your idea is to get with Andy and have a conversation.
Right.
Let's
I mean,
let's
they
let's do
just
that. Okay,
It has
Mike.
to make sense.
You guys, Andy, you guys will work with Commissioner Martha and go through this. Okay.
Yes, sir.
We could keep moving.
Yeah, it just has to make sense. And, in terms of going forward, I mean, if somebody wants to have, shows or whatever, I mean, there's plenty of officials who came up from, who are professional officials now, who came up from amateur. They certainly have this. I mean, look at Zach Young, even Jack Reese. I mean, heck, I came up from amateurs. There's plenty of people who came up from amateurs who are able to do it. I know Joe Zanders very well. I know that Chino, the city subsidizes the amateurs. So the money is there. I mean, they were willing to fly these kids out to Hawaii to do so the money is there. They should not be in the red. This does not make any sense. So this stuff needs to make sense. So can we just get this,
So before the
going.
next meeting, you'll
Yeah.
come back with
let's just
Great.
get that going.
anything else from Mike?
I would like to understand this whole AIBA thing, because AIBA is with the IOC, but they're having the, Russian, I don't get it.
2 points, and I can explain. One, I will have Lynette get a hold of you to get you administrative rights, just like we provide anyone. I think Andy still has them, so that's not a problem. We'll take care of that when I get back to the office. She'll send you an email and walk that through. When it comes to the international boxing, AIBA has been suspended, and they're not allowed to participate in the Olympic trials or the Olympic Games because the World Championships was on the books, and it is not a qualifying event to the Olympic Games. That's why
They have to
AIBA was
finish that.
able to let it participate, but it does not impact the Olympic Games. Our boxers will participate in 2 qualifying events, one in Buenos
Okay.
Aires and one in Paris.
Okay.
Anything else, Mike?
Nope.
Thank Mike.
Thank you very much.
You're out. It's 3:15. You can go, man.
Thank
Have a
you.
great trip, and thanks for coming.
Thank
You
you.
want to message us, maybe what you want to message us, maybe what you wanted to tell us, or help us with the gender equity stakeholder meeting later?
Yes.
We would love your input.
Okay.
I'm sorry
thank
you can't
Thank
attend.
you for giving us an opportunity for the
And
input, because I do think
Ayana Verduzco goes by Roxy.
Pardon me?
Ayana Verduzco goes by Roxy.
Oh.
It's much easier.
Who's up next?
JT Steele from Camo.
For the record,
Hello, JT Steele from Camo.
good morning. I am JT Steele from
Camo.
Camo.
From Camo.
Good afternoon. That's right. Chairman Carvelli and Commissioners, good to be with you. I provided you my report, so feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. I'll just touch on some highlights of things that we've been working on in Camo. Continuing efforts with drug testing. It's been an evolution, and I think we're just about to the point where I feel like we have a program that's going to be sustainable and will be predictable for our athletes. So we've had a lot of education, a lot of surprised faces in locker rooms when we tell people that, hey, we're testing today. I can tell you we've had some good conversations, but it's been very positive, and I no pun intended. It has been positive. In fact, we've seen a vast majority of the athletes testing positive for marijuana. But
Vast majority?
yeah, definitely a majority. However,
I don't know why that's funny,
No, it means the one
Sounds-
who
it
test
is
positive
prevalent.
but it just sounds funny.
But I hope to be able to, in anticipation of the December meeting in Sacramento, be able to have complete forms and exactly the way that we are going to be issuing suspensions and pretty much I think our 2020 program, exactly how we're going to operate it and the budget that we're going to apply to it. So I look forward to that. I think you should too. We had quite a significant event at the forum. I did note with Bellator MMA, which we appreciate. some feedback for the staff and for Andy and the commissioners. I was able to sit back and watch. It's a large event with 17 fights, and Sophia was there, and Sean Wells was there, and they did a tremendous job. I mean, they really did a wonderful job of running that show, and I thought I'd provide you that feedback
There
because
you go, Sophia. All right. Yeah.
sometimes, you know, the staff that works those events, it's late nights, it's weekends, and there are so many managerial issues that transpire over the course of the night. They did a phenomenal job. But what was really special about that event for us was they had it was obviously one of their large stadium shows. They had 17 fights. Of those 17 fights, 12 of the athletes on that card, so almost half the card, graduated from the Camo program, that's awesome. It's great to see that our amateurs are really coming to their own in the professional program. The other thing that was interesting and fun to watch was the majority of the officials that were ringside were also graduates of the Camo program. So program is largely doing what we're trying to do. We have appreciated Andy's efforts in supporting the pro-ams.
Can I
They have
interrupt you?
been successful.
Can I interrupt you right
Please.
there? Sorry. While I'm thinking about this. I would like to work something out with our people and with Andy in terms of our ringside people who seem to graduate from Camo and then seem to never go back to Camo, and who should go back to Camo and help train and help work with the amateurs. And once they leave, seem to think that there's no either requirement, there should be a requirement of service to go back and help, like in the old days. Don't you think, Andy?
I think, be honest with you, I've never really thought of it in that context before, but because some of the guys do. John McCarthy used to go do Camo all the time,
Absolutely.
and he was,
Yep.
at that time he was the,
And then people used to go back because he used to go back.
Yeah.
And then John McCarthy retired, and then nobody went back.
we get Mike Beltran or Herb to go back, and everybody will start going back.
Well, we would appreciate that. Obviously, it's definitely part of the program. Is that we build people up and they move on. It's great to have them come back because it maintains leadership, but it's also good for the officials because Camo is the most prolific amateur program in the country, and this is a way for all of our officials, the top officials, to be able to stay busy and to stay sharp. Is by honing their craft, and it doesn't really matter if you're at the amateur level or at the pro level. It's time in the ring and it's experience, and that's what makes great inspectors and great referees.
And frankly, it's good training grounds for our people too. And for the next generation and the next generation, and this is how it works.
It is, and there is something comforting, I think, for these athletes when they are worked with the same people throughout their careers. It's a good community that we have here in California. So we would definitely support any efforts to continue to foster that for sure. Chairman Carvelli gave me a charge last commission meeting to get on social media. We have secured a social media manager. We've got our social media up. And,
Are you on Instagram?
I can't remember the tag.
I just looked you up. I couldn't.
I think it was CAMO with periods, MMA with all periods. I'll try to send it to you today.
You'll try
You
to
have to
send
get-
it to me today, or you're going to send it to me today?
I'll go ahead and send it to you today. Yeah, I need to find it. You have to get pretty creative with Instagram handles these days. So
Camo's a really popular.
yeah, there's a lot of.
Yeah, if you want to buy camo gear, I found those sites. But, yeah. So what do you
Yeah.
think it is?
I think it's Camo MMA with all periods in between it.
C.A.M. Wow,
I think so.
that's interesting. Okay. Well,
But
how about Facebook?
Facebook is up. We posted something today. We got hundreds of views on it. So
Great.
I know it's working.
Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. Also, notably, we can talk about it a little bit more, so I don't delay this. But with the stakeholder meeting in the evening, we have a full female card this Friday in San Diego. Should be interesting. This is the second or third time that we've had a full female card. It's actually going to include female youth athletes as well from the USFL, and we're excited for that. Quite frankly, we have that many female athletes that we can put on all female cards, and they appreciate that, and they like
You're
to
going to
do
stay
that.
for the meeting?
Yes,
You're going to talk about that?
I can.
That'd
Sure.
be great. Sure.
I can do that. And other than that, we have a very busy rest of the year. I think we're going to finish the year with probably close to about 100 events. So it's been busy in California this year. Any thoughts or any questions on the report?
We don't have any injury results from you, do we?
You know what? I did forget to do that.
No, they're here.
Did I?
Yeah.
Did I send my
It's
suspensions?
Exhibit A.
Oh,
Okay.
there it is.
There we
Went
go.
through it
Thank
75
you.
times and still missed it.
So
Thank you.
I have a
Sorry.
question, maybe Andy, if you can help me look at this. It does look, you have some kind of significant injuries, but I just don't know if this is below normal for MMA events or equal to or below. So Andy, if you could maybe look, I'm looking, there's a lot for the 21st fight, so maybe if you can just give me well, you can expound, JT. Do you think your injuries are below what's normal?
Due to the high volume of fights that we've had over the last couple months, I'd say this is actually probably on the lower side. I'd say that these obviously are what we're most concerned about are concussions, knockouts. I would say this is going to fall in the range of about a 4%, maybe 3.5–4% knockout rate, which is standard for camo and which is across the country very low. So I would say that these are probably right on par. If it seems like a long list, we've had a lot of events and a lot of large events. So I would say this is very, very typical.
A lot of jaw fractures. I don't know what general MMA injuries look like, but
Well, you're seeing a lot of TKOs, and that's typically the catch-all that referees will use when they stop a bout in mixed martial arts. So, like, if they step in and, stop the bout because of, like the one we saw this morning, okay, with the Aspen line or whatever, that's going to be a
Absolutely.
TKO.
TKOs generally represent 25 to 35% of the results.
right.
What I look for is the ones that don't have the T in front of them, where they got totally knocked out.
The KOs.
And that typically in MMA you will always have a T. This is blanket, but you're still conscious if you have the T in front of your KO, and if you're unconscious, you've got just a KO. That's fair.
That's fair. And the way that we address TKOs at amateur, these athletes are learning, and generally what happens is they get in a position that they can't get out, and the referee stops it. They either don't have the skills, or the opponent that they have is just significantly better than them, perhaps in their ground game, and they get stuck and they can't get out, and our referees err on the side of caution, and there's no reason to take any type of additional damage. We get them out of the fight as quick as
Also have a
possible.
good shot.
So TKOs are very common because it mostly relates to positioning.
Anything else for JT? Commissioners?
Good
Thanks,
work
Jake.
on the drug testing. That's super great work and
Thank you.
helpful.
Come with something in December, though. I've heard this thing is, okay?
You're
See you
welcome.
in December.
I'll be there.
Thanks, JT. Steve, right? Andy?
Yes, Steve Fossum, sir.
IKF, thanks for being patient.
Not a problem. Good afternoon, everybody. In essence of time, I know everybody's in a rush. Probably my easiest thing to say is
our train is running good down the track, and everything's handling well. Great staff.
I
doing
didn't
a lot of-
realize you were so mean, Steve, sanctioning your fighters for missing weight. Great for you.
Discipline is a missed art nowadays, I guess. I do want to address the whole idea of that whole missed weight thing, because that's something along with the drug testing that it sounds like JT is looking at doing that for 2020. We would like to really jump on board for that, to add that in there for 2020. I think the missed weight thing is it's a big thing for everybody, whether you're a promoter or an opponent of the fighter who missed the weight. It's become issues that we've had to really knuckle down to figure out a way to deal with, to add that in there basically as far as a disciplinary aspect. Another thing I like to bring up is when JT was talking about the inspectors, or I think Martha brought it up, or somebody brought it up here, about people coming back as pros. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of jump to the pro, because there's not a lot of pro kickboxing and Muay Thai events in California. But one of the questions I do have is, it's still not okay, and I understand if it's not, but the inspectors that work for the pro events for CSAC, can they still not work for us as an amateur event? And I can't remember the
You
reason.
always do this to us, Steve. You always come and you ask these like really serious questions, and we're like, "What?" So so really, the question should be addressed to Andy first and
Okay,
foremost,
all right,
and then
all
if
right.
there's a problem that he can't answer, then he'll bring it to us.
Okay, gotcha.
It has nothing to do with it's 3:30 in the afternoon and you're throwing. That's what
Well, the train's moving, toot toot. And
We're all ready to pass out.
You're like, you sit here
With-
all day.
Have
and come up
one
with
night
this-
to go. Come on.
Have you asked Andy that question?
I have when we first started.
And you didn't get the answer you wanted, so you
He didn't like it. So
Well,
he's asking
well, it wasn't so much
us.
I didn't like it. We weren't sure, because someone was saying that some of those inspectors
Right,
had
you'll
worked.
work with him on
So
that.
yeah, I can just
Thank
toot
you.
toot down the road.
We'd love to hear about your aches and pains and your victories.
You got a lot of medicals.
Yeah.
Our doctors have stepped up with adding in medical stuff quite a bit.
Are
Safety.
your doctors the same as our doctors?
Yeah.
Rhonda's on there.
I think there's only one that's not a
You got one.
CSAC doctor.
See that, Martha?
You got one.
She had a TKO with seizures and one ambulance transport.
There's been a couple of
Jeff
ambulance
Roberts is
transfers.
also
We ambulance transfers. Our doctor have stepped up also, because in the past we've had people that were recommended for ambulance transfers and they refused it. And I know a couple of instances where the doctor pretty much talked the parents into saying, "Hey, you need to go just to be checked out." So,
Parents? Oh, these are kids
what's that?
for children.
Well, parents, they're adults as well. So.
So a lot of precautionaries. That's good.
How do you feel about your injuries? You think everything's low and you're just
I think they're pretty normal.
safe?
Keep in mind, there looks like a lot more on this report, because I was sick and wasn't able to go to the June or July one or whatever.
Right.
So
Or they're double.
yeah. So it looks like a lot more on there, but I don't think we're any massive exception of
There are also lots of precautionaries.
Yeah. If a bout gets stopped, they get a 30, 45, and then some. If you notice on a couple of those where the doctor, after they did the post-bout evaluation, they thought there was an additional injury, so they added that on there as well. So
You staying for the meeting?
yeah,
Will you have something to say about females in kickboxing?
sure.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not dismissing you. Anything
Oh.
else, commissioners? Thanks, Steve. Thank you.
Okay,
We'll
thank you.
Obviously, see you soon. Andy?
John Frank, sir, from the United States Fight League.
Hello, sir. Thank you
Good
for
afternoon,
being-
John Frank.
Last but not least.
So I'll just skim over my report. So since I submitted the report, we've had one additional event, which was in Riverside, which only had 6 bouts. But from the last commission meeting, we had a total of 53 bouts. We had one injury, which was a knee injury, and that was out of state. It was in Tennessee, 15-year-old male. So to date, our number is 2,130 exposures with 30 injuries and 0 concussions. Most are orthopedic, and in my opinion, I think most of the injuries would not be considered injuries with the adult version of the sport. It's more precautionary.
Like sprains, you mean?
Sprains, or they just complaining against, if they get the fight gets stopped by an armbar and they're complaining that it hurts, the doctor will generally suspend them, and then I find out they're training the next day, or I see them in the venue after that running and climbing.
Youth.
So it's more related to.
They
just
figured out
try-
a way to get out of the fight. Okay, fair enough.
And then I just wanted to go over. We did take a successful team to the Youth World Championships. We brought 34 kids.
Wow.
20 were based out of California. There's a correction. There was 26 countries that were represented. One did not get a visa. I had 27 on my report. And the United States did take first place. We beat out Ukraine and Russia
Congratulations.
for the top three.
And good stuff on Instagram that I've seen. That's good. Really good.
How did somebody not get a visa to Italy?
It was, I think it was a country of India. Certain,
Oh.
yeah, different countries. Different countries.
Let anybody in Italy.
That's rough.
And I'd just like to read off the names of the. So we did have 15 world champions from the United States, and 8 of them were from California. So I'd just like to acknowledge their names and where they're from. Shania Carlson from Desert Hot Springs, Jaylene Martinez from Moreno Valley, Nadia Barrientos from San Diego, Rashad Satterwhite from Hesperia, Travis Boyles from Kelseyville, Alexander Ramirez from Beaumont, Sergio Porres from Chula Vista, and Raul Rosas from Santa Rosa. We're all California-based world champions.
Awesome.
That's very great, John. Thank you for.
Did 2 of them come see us?
Both that came to you, both won the world champions. Nadia won she had 4 submissions in a row. Our girls were particularly dominant. They started the tournament with the 16 and 17-year-old female division. We had 4 girls entered.
Say
and they
that
had,
again. The girls were what?
The girls were dominant
Uh-huh.
within the realm and the world championships.
Wait, say that again. I didn't hear you.
The American girls were dominant.
Yeah.
So the 4 girls that were entered in the 16 and 17-year-old division started the tournament off with 13 submissions in a row.
13
submissions in a row.
You know, they do say that women are better at, what is it? The not memory, obviously. The endurance sports.
So,
Don't comment on this. Just keep going.
we were successful out there, and we're hopefully we can repeat next year. We're looking at as early as March, maybe, to hold the World Team Trials National Championships. There's a few proposals. On the way here, I learned that one of the proposed venues that agreed to host it, and I heard this secondhand, was the Apex Center in Vegas of the UFC, which I think if we were able to do, will probably draw a lot more athletes at the Nationals than we did this year. We fell a little bit short. We had a little bit less than 90, and we were hoping about 150.
You're talking about the UFC Center in Las Vegas?
That's from what I understand. Today I got a phone call that they are receptive to hosting the Nationals there.
You're gonna help them out with that, Andy. That'd be great. That'd be fun to come.
I have not cleared it with the Nevada Commission yet, but the UFC did.
We know people there.
I don't think they'll have a problem with it. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Amazing.
That's great,
Very,
John.
very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Should be proud of all the
Are you staying?
kids that
To
you work with.
gloat?
Yeah, no, it's the female is a big interest for us because we have high level girls, and we're running out of.
And because we're
People-
better, I'm going to be so insufferable. You guys should vote for us.
We're just running out of opponents for them, so we have them sitting stagnant.
I'm going to be more insufferable.
More insufferable. Thanks, John.
So it is an
Nobody's
interest.
paying attention.
And, were there any? I did have one other thing.
I think your statistics speak for themselves, though. So, yeah.
We did launch a program called the At-Risk Youth Outreach Initiative, and it was actually started in Florida. It's in conjunction with a program called the Credible Messengers, which are persons that were incarcerated for long periods of time. And it's a 30-hour program where they go through to mentor other at-risk youth. So our program in Florida has always been partnered with them, and we're trying to bring that to California. I actually have a meeting on Sunday with the San Diego chapter to try to start a program there, and the emphasis is to draw some of these kids in to participate in youth pancreation, but with the caveat that they also have to participate in the character development program from the Kravitz Leadership Institute that are developing, and also within the Credible Messenger program. They have.
Is that inside or outside?
Oh, this is outside. This is non-incarcerated kids. These are just at-risk kids, pre-incarceration. Hopefully, to avoid that totally. But so we are starting an initiative with that, and we're also looking at, we have one in Compton and one in South Central that we're going to try to build. We're just trying to find a partner, gyms, to host the kids in the programs. And we are also creating these programs within, right now we have 2 tribal entities in California that are starting Morongo, and one in San Diego, Viejas, where we're also going to incorporate this program.
Excellent. That's great.
That's all I have.
That's great
Do you have
stuff,
any
John.
questions?
That's, on the stuff, if we can help with somehow, as a commission or even as individuals, I'll speak for my associates here. Let us know on this at-risk youth stuff. Maybe Martha knows everybody and can obviously intimidate them.
I don't know anybody, and
Yeah.
obviously have absolutely no influence at all, or my commissioners over here would have voted in favor of Aspen Lad.
Oh my God, we're complaining about Aspen Lad. Thank you, John. Andy, do you have anything else? Who, by the way, was beaten by another woman. We forgot about that part.
It was the larger
I'll just point
issue
out right now.
which mattered. But I do.
Yeah.
I
So
have
what
a
about
question.
her?
She got Amanda Nunez in December. Excuse me. I have a question. Unfortunately, Mike is gone. I should have asked. Ken, I don't know if you know about this, but I had this other idea. All the ideas are. We used to have this program in prison for
You were in prison?
boxing. And a lot of the other states have these programs in prison for boxing. And I know we had this not very good incident dating back some years, but it was kind of a bad incident. But we had, decades and decades of really good boxing programs, and some of the other states still do. I think Bernard Hopkins was a product of that. There are some very good athletes that were products of that. And I know that we're really busy, but do you think there's any hope of maybe resurrecting that, even on the amateur side? Thinking of doing something like that?
Well, my understanding is that there has an issue has come up with the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation about those sorts of programs. I think it would require liaising with them, but it's something we could look into. But I believe that the source of the change was with the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation has jurisdiction over the prison system.
I guess my question is, do you think it's something that people would be receptive about, or do you think that the events of the past are too scarring?
I wouldn't rule out the possibility there might be someone receptive to it. I don't know, but it's something that could be examined.
Is there somebody we could talk to?
I think that what we'd have to do is probably proceed through the Department of Consumer Affairs, because it involves interagency relations, but there would be probably someone at the deputy director level at the Department of Corrections Rehabilitation that would oversee those sorts of programs. And so it would probably be at that level, a deputy director to deputy director communication.
What do you think, John? Do you think that's a good idea or not such a good idea?
I think we should look into it.
Yes, I think it is a good idea.
There's got to be something that already was, or
There was, and
Yeah.
then something not good happened, and then it went away.
Well, let's just talk more about it, but I don't think right here and now. But yes,
Okay.
let us absolutely do that.
We can look into it.
Yes, please, let us, Andy, if you could mark that, note
So,
that.
and this is categorized as a follow-up to the report that we just received for purposes. Yeah, so, thank you.
Andy, anything else on your report?
Yeah, just quickly, just to let you know, 11/9, we have big fight at the Staples Center with the YouTubers fighting. Invite the commissioners to that. And I'll keep you posted as we get more big events as they come in.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 12, Business and Professions Code, Section 18640.5 requires commission to invite stakeholder testimony at commission meetings in order to identify actions that may lead to greater opportunities for licensees to participate in major regional boxing contests. Would anyone from the public like to comment on that? Agenda item number 12, seeing none. Agenda number item number 13, public comment on items not on the agenda. Anybody like to raise an issue that is not on our agenda today? Okay, here's the time where we clear the room and we go into closed session for agenda item number 14. Hey, Mark, you just have to come in and out. The commission will meet in closed session as authorized by government code to deliberate and to confer with legal counsel. We will, sorry? Oh, yeah, we'll do a quick restroom break. Everyone clear the room, please.
yeah, come back at 5 o'clock.
Yes.
Well, we're supposed to go on the record for adjournment. Yeah.
Can you just give us, is this going to take long? We don't even have counsel here, so. So let's go off right now. We off? Caesar? We're off? Okay, we're off. Turn us off. Okay, we're back from closed session. And so Patricia, Sophia, Andy, Ken, thank you very much. Caesar, folks, thank you very much. Thank you, commissioners. We hope to see everybody at 5 o'clock for our stakeholder meeting. And I'll just say for the record, here at the Biltmore, this stakeholder meeting will discuss the topics of gender equity in combat sports, drug testing thresholds in combat sports, and taking a common sense approach to anti-doping. Thank you all. We are adjourned. Turn us off, Caesar.